So recently somebody challenged me to get to the bottom of this waterfall in Halo Combat Evolved. But there's not really a way to do that because it's a sheer vertical cliff face and the drop is massive. So can we do it anyways? Let's give it a shot! This cliffside with the waterfall is located on the second mission of Halo Combat Evolved, and the mission's name is called Halo, just like multiple other Halo missions from the Halo franchise. Just saying, they could have got a little bit more creative with these. But anyways, just after you exit the drop pod, you'll be required to cross a little forerunner bridge. Now below this bridge is the base of this cliff, and it's a pretty big drop. You know, I don't have a Halo measuring stick or anything, but if I had to guess, it's probably somewhere between 500 to 1,000 feet. And in Halo Combat Evolved, just like the other Halo games, there is something called fall timer, where if you fall for like 3 seconds, you instantly die. And if you look at this cliff, it's not hard to see that you're not just going to be casually sliding down this somehow. So if I couldn't descend down this waterfall to get to the base of this cliff, how was I planning on doing this? Well, I would have to get outside of the map. And I went down the YouTube rabbit hole a little bit, and I actually found a video of someone that was able to get to the bottom of the map. This video only has 444 views over the last 15 years. And no offense to Miss Man, who I think is the original creator of this video, but it's a very 2010, 2011-esque tutorial. Let's just say there's not a ton of context about what you're supposed to be doing and how to do it. But regardless, I set out to complete this challenge. I booted this mission up, and thankfully, this is one of those tricks that you don't really need any skulls for. But we do need a warthog. So our first step in this is clearing out the 6 or 7 dropships of enemies that never seem to stop. After doing this, Foehammer will come and drop off a warthog.
Are they redoing the graphics on this again?
I am assuming that Halo Studios' next release is just going to be this game again, pretty much. And there's already reports that it's bad, so we're going to go through the infinite cycle of, oh my gosh, there's hope. No, they're really bad. They're doing really bad. Everybody's saying it's really bad. And then people are like, no, actually, this giant media campaign convinced me that it's going to be great. And then it's terrible.
Listen, dude.
Rinse and repeat. You could literally make this a meme. Alex, make me the triangle, the pointing arrow in a circle meme.
I do make memes. I am a meme maker, and they're usually pretty good.
Why do they have to do a whole slap around this thing? This is just a torture experiment. She's doing tricks on it. So after just 10 minutes, we were already ready to get this trick set up. I just needed to take my brother to the cave entrance where Cortana famously says, this cave is not a natural formation. If you go back and forth between the entrance of this cave and just around the first corner, you can basically get infinite checkpoints. So for the purposes of this trick, my brother was going to be a checkpoint jockey. You're going to get out right here. And then once you go up to that corner around there, you're going to get an automatic checkpoint. So you're going to be my checkpoint jockey. All you got to do is walk back out to here and then walk back in.
Tell me if the meme's any good. Good.
Here it is, guys. Here it is.
You're welcome.
So now that we had the Warthog and my brother was in position to get the checkpoints, it was now time for me to get outside of the map. Now there's one specific part of this giant cliff face that you can go up with your Warthog. It's located just next to the tower, but in order to not waste a tremendous amount of time, at every section of the step I'm having my brother go and get a checkpoint. This way if I mess up, I can just simply revert. And when I complete each step, I'll have him get another checkpoint. Oh, come on.
I lost my connection to Xbox Live. Did you lose your connection?
No. Yeah, I just said that you're now playing the Master Chief Collection. So as is tradition, the game crashed in the middle of doing this trick. But luckily, we were only about 15 minutes into this total, so I was glad to get the crash out of the way nice and early. If this happened in the middle of this, a couple hours in, whew, I would be mad. But anyways, back to where we were. I lined my Warthog against this spot on the cliff and had my brother get a checkpoint. In order to get up this first cliff, you need to go by the gray area on the mountain just where the grass patch is meeting this. You also need to back up enough so that you're going full speed. If you're not going full speed, you will not be able to make the caterpillar-like crawl up this cliffside. I don't think I went fast enough for this. Now you might be asking yourself, if you're trying to get to the bottom of the cliff where the waterfall is, why are you getting out of the map over here? Well, the plan is to get to an invisible mountainside, and as we'll find out in a very short amount of time, the route to get there goes through this specific path, and it's not as easy as just driving over there, even once you get out of the map. Now, even though this might look janky, it doesn't matter how fast you go. Once you hit a certain point in this cliffside, you will be crawling about an inch every second. Once you hit this less steep surface just above this gray area, you will then need to drive immediately to the right. The reason for that is because if you hit a certain point vertically on the map, every time that the beam shoots, it will freeze your entire game. Now, this point is just below the top of the tower where the beam is shooting. Every time this thing shoots... Oh, can you give me a checkpoint real quick?
I'm frozen.
Yeah, every time this thing shoots, it freezes the game for like 11 seconds or something like that. So I can't drive my Warthog, so we have to do this in like segmented pieces. So the first time I did this, I fell into the trap I just said to avoid. I went a little bit too high on the vertical axis on the map, and it froze both players permanently. Sometimes when you do this, it doesn't unfreeze.
I think we're cooked, Chad. I think we're cooked. You honk your horn?
No. After waiting for 3 full minutes for this to unfreeze, it never came. So I had to reset this, but this time I focused on getting my Warthog on a lower part of the top of this cliff face. I was barely outside of the map, and even still, I had 3 or 4 sequences left to be able to get to that invisible cliff face by the waterfall. This time, I instead got outside of my Warthog so that I didn't experience the frozen never-ending screen. My plan was to time this out so as soon as I saw the beam shoot, I would turn around, get in my Warthog, and then I would try to drive to the next section within the amount of time before the beam shoots again. Because this would freeze me, I was going to have to go up this steep surface that you're about to see. I would need to get to a spot where 1, I wasn't permanently frozen, and 2, where after 15 seconds of being frozen, I could drive again. But I would have to do this without falling off the cliff face.
Are you frozen going down, man?
I don't know, dude. I think I have to make it to a certain point in a certain amount of time. So my first go around trying to get to the next step of this cliff to get out of the map wasn't good. There's normally a 15-second freeze time, but I think if you drive your Warthog too high up on the cliffside, you won't ever get unfrozen. That is, until you have already fallen back in the map. Okay, I think you can give me a checkpoint. I parked where I thought was low enough to not get frozen by the beam, and then I asked my brother to go get another checkpoint. I knew this was going to take a lot of attempts, and any time that I could save was going to be needed. Bro. On my 4th or 5th attempt, I tried seeing what getting to the edge of this cliff face before the beam shot a second time would do if I were to get out of the Warthog just before this. And I was still frozen and couldn't move, and the Warthog slid off the cliff face. So I was back to trying to jet across this cliffside as fast as I possibly could. I knew I was doing something wrong, and I think I was just too slow. Man, you gotta go quick. There's gravel around me. So after around like 10 attempts, I was already 30 minutes into this. And all I managed to do was get up the cliffside with the Warthog. I wasn't sure if this was maybe because I was on MCC on PC, maybe it was different than the original game and you couldn't actually do this. I had no idea, but it wasn't working. Until this happened. Checkpoint me, checkpoint me.
Oh. You're not supposed to be doing something the whole time?
So I finally made it to the next part of the cliff face. But this tutorial that I was trying to recreate step by step from Miss Man, yeah, this was one of those missing pieces that I was referring to earlier. So I didn't know this at the time, but if you can actually get your Warthog to start revving again after you make it to the far side of the cliff face, you then have to drive your Warthog as fast as you possibly can to the edge of the other side of this cliff face just around the corner. So it took me about 30 minutes just to make it from point 1 to point 2 on the mountainside and still be able to drive my Warthog. And just as quickly as it happened, it went away. Because I didn't go to the lower edge of the cliff face, my game completely froze forever. At this point, I had spent an excessive amount of time on this trick with basically nothing to show for it. I couldn't get to the other side of this cliff face consistently, so I had to come up with a new strategy altogether. Right before the tower would shoot, my plan was to do a loop around on the grass just behind where I was starting previously. This way I could cut into the lower part of the map without getting frozen, but I would be driving my Warthog fast enough so that as soon as the beam shoots, I'm already going full speed towards the cliff face. And what do you know, this strategy actually worked out extremely well. But now I had to race to the cliffside. If I made it, I was on to the next step. If I didn't, I'd have to restart again. Now, I couldn't believe that attempt, especially with the sloppy start, actually made it. I got out of my Warthog to make sure that I wouldn't freeze. Okay, I think I'm ready for another checkpoint.
Shit. I threw a grenade. Let's scope myself.
Okay, we're done with step 1.
Step 2, get a cigarette and smoke it.
So the real next step is driving our Warthog as fast as we possibly can up this cliffside past these trees into the invisible barrier part of outside of the map. Now, where exactly am I aiming for? Well, essentially you need to go up this little cliff face and then you need to keep driving off into the disappearing Neverland. If your Warthog doesn't stop, you've done this successfully. If your Warthog stops at any point, you haven't. Your goal is to get to the top of this mountain. If you get there fast enough and go past a certain point where it all turns invisible, you won't be subject to the normal beam. Let's see if we get unfrozen.
I believe.
I don't think I'm going to get unfrozen.
Amish fresh-made potato chips.
So in just my third attempt doing this, I actually managed to get unfrozen while driving the Warthog. And now we were on to our final step. Okay, crashed into something. Now to complete our next step in getting to the base of this cliff and waterfall, we need to drive our Warthog along this invisible barrier going by feel only. eventually you will hit the edge of the mountain, which is a pretty sheer vertical cliff face. Now, the plan, if we can get to this, is to somehow maneuver our warthogs so we can slide down this invisible mountain. The traction from the warthog wheels would allow us to fall slowly enough so that we didn't die to fall timer or fall damage from falling too fast. But before I started this next step, I wisened up, learned my lessons, and made sure that I got out of the warthog as I instructed my brother to get another checkpoint. I found that this was a decent way to ensure that you didn't get frozen, although it didn't work all of the time. But now, it was time to get to the invisible cliff edge.
Dude, you gotta be saying that on live, dude. Not cool.
Think I'm driving against a barrier? Hard to tell. Okay, if you want to try to get me another checkpoint, I think that would be acceptable. Never mind, don't get it right now. I just fell off the edge. Okay, you can progress forward to try to get this checkpoint. So eventually I got the feel of where I thought the edge of the cliff was, but it's really hard to tell because, like I said, there aren't really reference points except these 2D models that are thousands of feet below you on the bottom of the map. But I lined up roughly where I thought this was and had my brother get another checkpoint. We were extremely close to pulling this off, and at this point, we were about an hour and a half in. There was no turning back now, buddy. Okay, you might be able to get another checkpoint.
On adore. C'est un élément. Quand tu sais un élément.
So I know I've been talking a lot, but straight up, I was panicking at this point. We had just gotten a checkpoint, but immediately after getting out of my warthog, I was pretty much frozen. So this basically meant that I had a frozen checkpoint. Now there was some hope though. If I got out of the warthog and died within 3 seconds, I wouldn't get frozen. So my plan was to revert back 2 checkpoints by having both players die simultaneously 5 times in a row. Now this works in Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, and Halo 3. Pretty much any Halo game, there is a double revert system where if both players are dying too much, they will help you out and basically shoot you back in time. Now I was going to need this because if this didn't work, I was screwed. Okay, we needed to immediately die.
Okay. No!
So luckily we were able to revert one previous checkpoint than the one that we had. Whew. If that didn't work, we would have had to reset the entire trick. But finally, we were on to our last step. No checkpoints now. Now, we just needed to use the warthog to descend down the invisible cliff face. Now the trick of this is, there is a flat vertical wall that will eventually end. Just on the corner of this is a slanted surface, and if you're looking into the map as a reference, it's roughly on the edge of the line where the map kind of just ends. Like I said, this process is all feel-based. You kind of have to inch slowly against the wall until you start seeing your warthog drop a little bit. But this also comes up faster than you would think. you might be able to get me a checkpoint now. So on my initial attempts to scale down this mountain, well, I couldn't tell you exactly how far I had to drive to get to the cliff face, but I would guess it was anywhere from like 200 to 300 feet. So it wasn't exactly efficient. Now, I found that if you got out of your Warthog before this beam shot, it pretty consistently made sure that you wouldn't freeze. Wait a sec, wait like 5 seconds. Obviously, I was employing the same strategy of getting back in my Warthog just after it shoots to be able to drive it, but I lined myself up pretty close to the cliff edge and then instructed my brother to get another checkpoint. I knew I had the double revert in my back pocket if I needed it, and I had no idea how long this was going to take or how hard this would be. After a couple minutes of failed attempts trying to slowly back the Warthog down the cliff, what I found was that the front weight would just topple over backwards every single time and you would get thrown out of the Warthog. I went back and reviewed Miss Man's video, and from what I could gather, even though this wasn't specifically mentioned, is that it seemed like you had to do a tail whip onto a cliff corner. So think of the flat wall as a 90 degree, and just on the corner of this is a rounded edge. I needed to get to the rounded edge just past that 90 degree where that vertical wall is. And it seemed like the only way to really do that was to do a quick tail whip. The goal was to get my Warthog vertically oriented, but with the front facing forward so that the traction from my wheels helped me descend very slowly to the bottom of the map so that I could survive the fall. And not only was I determined to pull this off so I could complete this challenge, but also because I uploaded a video getting to the bottom of the light bridge on the mission Halo in Combat Evolved, and everybody clowned on me for being such a terrible Warthog driver and not being able to do a tail whip. But this time, I was determined for redemption.
Checkpoint's done. Wake me up when this trick is done. Good night.
Where's it come from? Achoo!
I may have gotten it. Just falling really, really slowly. Warthog isn't even visible in the anniversary graphics.
Oh.
I'm really scared. How close am I to the bottom?
Don't know. I don't know. They're going straight to the moon. Straight to the moon.
So real quick, there's a guy called Halo.3.game.fans on TikTok who is stealing every single one of my videos. I sent 2 DMCA takedown requests, TikTok ignored them both. I don't ask for much, but if you want to support me, I put a link to his channel in the video description below. If you could go down and report him for impersonating me, I would love that. I'm descending very slowly. This is good. I think I'm almost there, dude.
Where are we going? I don't remember where we're going.
Going to the bottom of the waterfall at the beginning of the mission.
This only makes sense to you, but I'm sure it makes sense in the video.
You know, the giant crosswalk you walk over? I'm going to that right now.
Dude,
I'm getting pretty close. I can see some banshees.
I gotta say, dude, if what's the diabetes medication?
Mounjaro or Ozempic?
Yeah, if they didn't have that, someone we know would never have lost weight.
We're here! Okay, you can die finally.
Hey, finally. Finally, freedom. Give me death or give me freedom. Whoa.
An anniversary, I'm not even driving a Warthog.
Why is there a banshee down here? Why can't I get into it?
Those are the banshees at the beginning of the mission. Look at this water, dude. It looks sick.
You gonna come get me or what?
Drive the banshee over.
They won't let me in.
I guess I'll come get you.
Wait a second. Maybe I gotta use a different button. Oh, flip the banshee. Wait a second. Wait. I can't. Really? They really did that. Dude, come on. Dude, that was my ride, dude. No, dude, stop. Dude, I just bought that.
See you later, buddy.
Dude, I just spent like $16,000 on my banshee, dude.
This
That's a V12. Oh, what? Oh.
Look at the anniversary. Isn't it crazy?
It's bad. Shit, those clouds look good in both. Well, actually, clouds look better in
the water up there.
What the? I'm under the water. Please help me.
Love how the textures go right through the water.
Alright, we launch back up now, or what are we done?
Yeah, right, dude. Alright, took long enough to get down here.
Alright, there we go.
See how far this baby goes.
Yeah, baby. There's more stuff to see in the anniversary graphics, but I do like classic. It really gives you the, I don't know, like you're having a
very good commentary.
Something we both seen, so you can understand it. It's like a surreal scene. It'd be like Inception or something, or a guy's talking while he's standing on water with a background like this.
How far does this go back, though? I'm hitting like the most random mountain. I'm like curving. Am I still going forward? It seems like it.
Well, I can get out and and find out. No, you're gone. Goodbye.
This is crazy. This is huge.
You know what else is huge? My love for Jesus.
Whoa, nice save.
You know who also saves us? Jesus. Also tell us if okay, you hit something. I felt as an empath I sensed that.
Still only certain parts of this can you actually see on anniversary graphics.
Okay, you can't see yourself on anniversary graphics. Dude, look down, there's a bunch of stars in anniversary graphic.
That's the constellation of O'Brien. Conan O'Brien. Where are you getting all these bullets from?
Who asked you this question? The federal government? I'm dropping a trail of breadcrumbs, bullets. Man, this is actually really effective.
Hitting right against the barrier?
Isn't it hilarious?
Dude, this is so far back.
Look at that. Look at that.
Dude, this bottom of this map is bigger than the freaking map.
Bigger than the last video, dude. Bigger than the last video.
Oh. It looks like that's the edge. It was a painful freaking journey here, dude. That stupid beam.
Alright guys, I'm gonna launch this back up first try.
We've almost come full circle. It's only taken what? 5 10 minutes.
Like you're smart, you're not. I did the Warthog launch. I win.